All right, Saints in the news as they make a move yesterday to bring in linebacker Quan Alexander in a trade with the San Francisco 49ers. We talk New Orleans Saints football with our guy Nick Underhill from NewOrleans.Football every Tuesday. Compliments of former LSU Tiger and current attorney Chris Perrette. Yeah, but Nick, I thought that the New Orleans Saints hated LSU football players.
That makes two now, right? They got Will Clapp, they got Quan Alexander. So
the only reason why they drafted Clapp because that was Benson's high school, right? That's what they all say.
Oh, that's the conspiracy. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that's the conspiracy over here. So what do you make of the move?
I think it's a good move for them. You look at the defense. I feel like they could have improved in a lot of areas, and maybe there's still room to do that. The linebacker was definitely one of them. I mean, I don't think anybody outside of Demario Davis was performing at a level where you weren't looking for upgrades. And on the defensive line, I think you could have looked at upgrades everywhere. And then, in the secondary, I know it's a spot a lot of people are looking, and I've heard cornerback tossed around a lot by, fans, other media members. I don't really see the fit at cornerback. Like, I just don't see where you're going to get that player, where you're going to slot him in, who you're taking out. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, are you really going to trade a first-round pick to get him to replace Janoris, Jenkins, or Lattimore? I just don't see it. Maybe safety, but, I think linebacker's a quiet spot. I mean, where they needed help. And the way they play, they don't really even use three linebackers. Like, they go to their, greatest depths to avoid to have to put these linebackers on the field, and they're replacing them with defensive backs. And, and sometimes I think that's to their detriment. And Quan's a solid fit. I think there's things about his game that, aren't great. The missed tackles are an issue. The injuries are an issue. But, I mean, I kind of feel like this is a one-year rental for, it costs him about $2 million. And then, the end of the year, maybe you revisit it. I don't see them paying him the $12, $13 million he's on the books for next year. But, the good outweighs the bad. You watch him play, and I think the read and react from him is really, really high. He sees things in the flats. One of the things, I watched all of his 2019 games. One of the first ones I put on was the Green Bay game, and, minutes into it, he's recognizing a bootleg and defending it, and it's like, oh, well, the Saints couldn't do this. So, I think his athletic ability really, really suits him well, and his coverage is really good. Even when his coverage isn't good, he has the range and ability to overcome that and kind of disguise it a little bit. In the running game, when he sees it and diagnoses it, he hits the hole, hits players well. I think there's some Patrick Queen to his game where he over pursues and allows himself to get blocked out, and sometimes he reads a run wrong and kind of gets caught up in the wash. But, overall, I think he's going to be a decent upgrade for them. I don't think Alex Anzalone was untouchable by any means. And, I think it's a very smart move to try to find a way to improve any area on that defense.
Nick_Underhill is where you find him on Twitter. He is the author and publisher of NewOrleans.Football, a great information site on the New Orleans Saints if you want to keep up with what's happening in the Crescent City and their professional football team. Also has a podcast that you can subscribe to anywhere you check out your podcast. Get it there. I was listening to the Spotify edition on my latest NewOrleans.Football podcast. First place is on the line for the NFC South this Sunday night at Raymond James Stadium with Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Do you expect Mike Thomas to be a go?
Right now, I mean, I would guess yes. It feels like things have been ramping up to that point. And he's returned to practice, and it seems like it's getting closer and closer. The end of last week, he was out there, and then on Friday, we saw him out there with the trainer. So, they're evaluating it and checking it, and it seems like he's pushing towards it. And it just feels like, I don't, the hamstring was legitimate, but I think once we get on the other side of today, everything's cleared up. There's no other things that can happen. The trade deadline's gone. He's healthy. There's really no reason for this player not to be playing. And I don't think that the absences are related to the trade deadline. But in the 2% chance that, these reports about him pushing for a trade or whatever were true, I mean, that's on the other side of it. But I think he's going to play. And, I think this is a huge game for this team. I kind of feel like in a lot of ways this is week one of the season. You get your team back. Your offense is what it's supposed to be. Mike's out there. Emmanuel Sanders is out there. We see what they can actually do. I don't feel like we know anything about this offense at this point. I just can't draw any conclusions off a team that's without the offensive player of the year for this long. It's just we haven't seen how they operate. And I think we're at the point now where the defense either figures it out or they don't. But this is where they have to start defining themselves from this point forward. And I think the point of patience is over. So I just kind of feel like everything's been building up to this game, and it really wasn't the first Bucs game where the season started. It's the second one, and now we're finally about to find out what this team can do.
So you mentioned we're still kind of figuring out exactly what this offense is this year because Mike Tomlin's been gone. Well, one thing you can say for certain is that they're incredible in the 2-minute drill. They have now, I think, what is this? I read in Jeff Duncan's article, this is the 5th touchdown that the Saints have scored in the final minute of the first half. If you look at the past 5 games, 4 of those scores come in the last 15 seconds. How do you quantify just how incredible Drew Brees is in these 2-minute situations?
I think he's one of the best to ever do it. And, there's arguments for a couple other people, but, I've never really seen Brees collapse in a 2-minute situation. And when he gets in there and they get rolling, I mean, it's unstoppable. And the way they scheme that stuff up is crazy too. Like if you look at their tight end production over the years, like so much of the tight end production comes in those 2-minute situations. And, it's to the point where like Kobe Fleener, like almost all of his yardage when he was here was in those situations. And going back to like 2017, like Fleener's like one of the top 4 guys in 2-minute situations with the score within 7 points on the Saints in receiving yardage. And you see it with Jared Cook too. Like so much of his comes in those situations, and it's just like he's always wide open in them. And the other thing I would say is alongside the 2 minutes, the other thing we know about this team that will serve it well is that they're gritty, they're resilient, and they hang in there until the end of games. And that is character building stuff that if they do win a Super Bowl, you'll look back on these games and say, okay, this helped, this helped, this helped. But like when you're putting together the Super Bowl documentary, like you aren't taking highlights from that Bears game. Like these games are so ugly early in the season that like you aren't getting the style points there. But yeah, I mean there is character building, but right now it's just this whole season it's been survive and dance, and that's how you end up in all these 2-minute situations, and they're coming through when they need to. So that's going to be a huge thing at the end of the year when you got to lean on it. But I just don't think that like your overall identity on offense is being formed yet, just because you don't know. But you get Mike back, and you got Alvin Kamara playing like, the world's greatest player.
Yeah.
And now you got 2 of these guys. And I think before it was like Mike was Saturn and Alvin was the rings. And it's like both these guys now are at the center of the offense. And you have like 2 like supreme alpha dogs that are defining characteristics. And when that comes together, like it's going to be really hard to stop.
Yeah, I mean, you could have 2 people accounting for nearly 300 yards alone every single game, which is going to be really hard for defense to deal with. Okay, real quick before I give you a bigger one to chew on, what's the word on Sheldon Rankins?
So he should be out for about 3 weeks. He had an MCL sprain. There is the short-term IR now, so if it is, 3 weeks or pushing beyond 3 weeks and how that's going to play out, like they could just easily put him there and get him back. But yeah, I think he avoided major injury, which is, a good thing for him. He's in a contract here, and it's a good thing for the team.
Now, speaking of the defense, the red zone defense, Nick, what is it, 23 trips to the red zone, 20 touchdowns for opponents, last in the NFL. I mean, you watch a lot of film. Is there anything you're seeing or anything that the Saints are saying that can they improve in this matter?
I think the stuff that's plagued the red zone defense has plagued the whole defense. And it's just these coverage breaks. You get down there and, you'll see Lattimore not trailing a guy when they're playing cover 1. And you see him, out at the 40-yard line not trailing a guy properly in cover 1. Like, there's just the same breaks that I think are happening everywhere, in that area of the field. Is maybe a little more pronounced down there.
Yeah.
But, it's basic fundamental stuff. You just see guys looking in the wrong places, and there's a guy covering the slot staring at the quarterback, and it's just, there's a receiver running by him, or, it's a bunch formation and someone gets caught up in the wash, on the crossing route. And it's just, basic stuff that used to be the things that you saw in 2016, 2015, when you'd watch this defense and it'd drive you nuts because, hey, why can't they figure this out? And, that stuff's back. But I do think there's these small moments week by week where you are seeing improvement. I mentioned the bootlegs earlier. They've eradicated those. There's cover 3 stuff that they do with how their help comes from the backside. Earlier in the season, you saw that bust a few times. Recently, they're covering it the right way. We didn't see a cover 2 bust, I don't think, in this game, and that was kind of, the recurring theme the 2 previous games. So this week, it was kind of like they were just getting beat in man coverage, which isn't good. Like, you don't want to see, Jenkins behind a guy or Lattimore behind a guy. But you can live with those kind of losses more so than just like, oh, like these two guys were looking at something and neither one of them knew where to go. So, there's still a lot of work to be done, but it's slowly, there's these like small, slow signs. I don't think they're ever going to like click in and be, a top defense. Coming into the season, I thought maybe if everything went right, they had the talent to do that. I think we're at the expiration point on that hope, but I still think that they can be formidable enough for this team to achieve its goals.
A great read on Alvin Kamara and how he is ripping up the NFL right now and on pace to be the NFL's Offensive Player of the Year. You can read that and much more over at NewOrleans.Football. Our guy Nick Underhill is with us every Tuesday. Compliments of former LSU Tiger and current attorney Chris Perrette as he brings us that conversation every week. Thank you, Nick. Enjoy the Tampa game. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always.
Thanks, Nick.
Close at hour 2 next.